We doing everything they talk about. You know I'm everything a boss about. Not putting work and gotta toss them out. I'm really biting, they just barking out. I'm really riding, they just parking now. His street, what to talk about. See the big H when I'm walking out. Yeah.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the locker room. Shout out to everybody that continues to join in and share the video, drop a comment, like, subscribe, and thank you all for tuning in. We got a special one today. Today we're going a little bit back to my roots, back to when I played in Europe, just to talk about not necessarily the team, but the league. We're talking about Switzerland today, as some big news came last week in regards to the league, and it's going to change the dynamic a little bit. And I'm excited to chop it up a little bit and get you guys' thoughts. And, you know, in order to dive into this area of Europe, I had to go to someone that sits right in the country, something that knows maybe a little bit more than I do. But I wanted to bring in a good friend of mine from Pro Football Switzerland, Mr. Kim Realini. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Hey, Jamal, thank you so much for having me. I'm good. What about you?
Good, man. Good, man. Appreciate you coming on, stopping by the locker room to chop it up. And this is an interesting one. It's an interesting one for both of us in regards to, you know, what's going on in Switzerland. So if you haven't heard the news already, but, you know, the Bern Grizzlies made some interesting signings, made some surprising signings. If you could even say they brought some guys back, and that is they brought back 6 of their own guys that went to the European League of Football to come back and play in the Swiss League, which are huge for Switzerland in terms of the quality and the guys that they are bringing back. Kim, when you heard this news, what were your first initial thoughts about it?
And my first initial thoughts were like, Bern wants to run it back. They want to go back where they ended it with these stellar players back in 2022 when they won the Swiss Championship. And unfortunately for Bern, the last 2 seasons, they won combined 2 games, I think. So they had a tough rebuild, and now they want to go back with the guys that have some ELF experience now. And my second thought was the next year's NLA season, also considering the other teams, has to be the best ever.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. And obviously a lot of people that obviously paid attention to this podcast and obviously know where I'm coming from. And, you know, obviously with the podcast being very ELF being very ELF heavy, you're probably wondering like what this means for Helvetic. But this show today is not about Helvetic. It's not about the ELF. This is good for the National League in Switzerland. Good to see, you know, some more, you know, competitive balance. We'll dive into that a little bit, but this is more about Bern. This is more about the National League in Switzerland. And when I saw this, I was like, even though these guys are homegrown players, even though these guys aren't getting paid, even though these guys are just returning back to, you know, their home team, this is really good for Bern. This is really good for the league. And it's curious how it's going to affect, you know, the dynamic of the league. Obviously, you mentioned over the past 2 years, they only won a combined 2 games. Their last Swiss Bowl champion was against my Colanda Broncos back in 2022, where, you know, they ended up beating them with Clark Evans at quarterback. But you even had some of those guys on the team then, like Dominic Leachy, you know, Ebo at running back. Sorry, some technical difficulties, but yeah, Tim might have been gone. You mentioned he was in Hamburg that season, and they still were able to go out and win in 2022 against the Colorado Broncos. So this is huge news, and I'm excited to see, you know, how else they build this team or who else they could possibly bring back. Are there more guys out there to return to Bern? What do you think?
I mean, they announced like several guys. I think it's still possible that like some more guys that have Bern roots are going to go back. I can imagine that like not everybody has decided where they're going to play next year, if they're going to go back to the Mercenaries or if they want to run it back with Bern. What I've heard, like the Bern guys are recruiting all the players, as they're coming in hot, they're motivated. So we'll see. Time will tell, I say.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned before, we'll dive into a different episode what it means for Helvetic. But Helvetic was already a heavy Bern-led player team. They only got, there's only one guy on there that played for the Kelowna Broncos. Everybody else is, Bern, Thune, Geneva, from other teams.
Zurich, Basel.
Zurich, yep, exactly. So Bern getting their guys back is crazy news, a crazy signing of just recruiting and bringing these guys back. Why do you think they even left to begin with in terms of left Helvetic to come back to the National League?
I think it was tough to establish a Swiss franchise, and unfortunately, some things off the field and on the field didn't turn out as planned, as everybody was hoping for. And some guys that came back are also maybe in the fall of their career, and I think also some of them want to end it where it started.
Yeah,
I can imagine that. I don't know the personal reason. I haven't talked to any Bern players. I know all of them, but I haven't talked personally with them yet. So that what I can imagine, and also, of course, starting to win again. I mean, the guards in 23 had some 3 wins, also some upsets. Unfortunately, the mercenaries only won 1 game. I think they're also hungry for leaving the field with a W again. And if they brought the squad back and they're ready to compete right away, despite all the teams are going to be stacked. There will be several contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does it mean for the Swiss League? Because as you just mentioned, there's going to be several teams that are stacked and have quality guys, and obviously Zurich's back in the first division. Kalanda's Kalanda, right? If anybody knows, I'm a former Bronco, so that's where my roots are. Having Bern back, Geneva's usually in the mix. I think the last Swiss Bowl, at least I played in back in 2010, we played Geneva. But what is just from a Bern, a team and organization perspective, what does having Bern back mean for the Swiss League?
I mean, Bern was like the first team that openly communicated and published the return of several players. I imagine that a lot of other players will go back to their home teams. Maybe not as much as in Bern's case, but I can see a lot of players go back to the other teams. And then, like I said before, the NLA is going to be stacked as it was never this good from a level of competition. Because in 23, you could say like the level took a downfall because of the guards, and a lot of players went more than I expected originally. Now this season in 24, the level was already good. For instance, Basel had the former guards quarterback Sky Noble. So the level was already again on the rise. And now for 2025, if more players go back to their original teams, and maybe some other things we discuss in a minute, the league has to be on a level it never been before.
Absolutely. And I think over the years, Bern kind of lost their identity, right? I played in 2015, 2016, again in 2018. I always remember playing Bern. They were tough, physical. It was always a hard-fought game. It was a game I personally was the most sore after. All right, those who remember Darius Willis, you try tackling a 6'2", 230-pound running back at the time, 2 or 3 times, a game, even playing them in the championship game. Bern was always that one physical team that you knew you had to tighten up the chin strap for. And, they're getting their guys back. Obviously, Tim Haney, they're getting their guy in the middle, who was young at the time, but obviously seeing how he developed. They're getting, guys back with experience. You can't, regardless of how you feel about Helvetic, playing in the ELF, it's a different type of experience that they're getting versus, what they're playing in their national leagues. Bern's getting depth. Right, Bern's getting depth. Obviously, they're getting the identity, the homegrown, the experience. It's going to be interesting because now the Swiss League becomes, even with just these guys coming back, becomes more competitive, becomes more interesting. You can't just shoe in Kalanda going to the Swiss Bowl as much as I want to with blue and red pin, preseason all the time. There's gonna be some tough games, and obviously, Basel, they're good every other year. But Bern is going to be the team that's going to make things interesting with all these guys coming back. We talked about what it means for Bern, what it means for the Swiss league. You know, what is Bern bringing back their guys mean for other teams in Switzerland in terms of how they're gonna go back this offseason, how they're gonna prepare training camp, stuff like that. Is it gonna? Do you think it's gonna elevate the level of play and competition and recruiting from other organizations in Switzerland, and as a whole, the league gets better from this?
For sure. I think the other teams try to get their guys back that played with the mercenaries and guards the year before. And one thing that we need to consider is that since this season, there are like 8 teams. Back when you played, probably was like 6 or 7,
Yeah.
probably 6. And for a couple seasons, it was 7 teams, and now it's 8, and the 4 best teams advance. But still, you have like the West Division and the Eastern Division, and each team plays twice your division opponent geographically and one opponent from the other division. And when you look at just the West Division, you have Thun, Geneva, Bern, and Basel. It's absolutely loaded. You mentioned Clark Evans before. He led the Bern Grizzlies to the Swiss title in 2022. Former Broncos quarterback, former Renegades quarterback, just fell short. This year against the Broncos, his former team, a 2-time MVP. He's now in Geneva, so he's building something there, and he might get some guys from France. Nothing confirmed yet, but like just across the Swiss border, there's like the French powerhouse, the Black Panthers.
Yeah,
so
they're
in exchange, and Basel was already had like the most explosive offense, a passing offense
we've ever shout out.
Yeah, we've probably ever seen. And now if they get some guys back or have some new pieces also on defense, they are absolute powerhouse. And then of course the team to beat is still the Broncos, in my opinion. Swiss champ. And I think for the Broncos, it's again making a run also at the CFL. Yeah, I played there in 2021. Shout out to the Broncos, of course. Shout out to every team. I mean, Robin Senrith, the Swiss quarterback, he is like the most improved player for sure.
Yeah.
He had, of course, he had great coaching all these years, but it's still not taken for granted to lead the team to the Swiss Championship and to the Europe CEFL, the European club competition besides the ELF final. I think it's going to be tough, to be honest, for the Zurich teams. The Renegades, I could see them in a rebuild despite signing Matt Hammer as a general manager,
athletic director.
Yeah, athletic director. Thank you. They're going to probably lose some players. Some players retired. Some might go now to the mercenaries. We don't know. Winterthur, they're a bit in a.
I feel like you never know what you're getting from Winterthur.
Yeah, you never know what you get.
Know.
And I mean, St. Gallen surprised everybody this year. The newly promoted team, so it's going to be really excited. To leave my biases aside, I played 21, like I said, with the Broncos the last 3 seasons with Basel. Probably sit out this year for educational reasons. But I'd say still I have Cologne on top. And next year, I think Bern, of course, they brought all these guys back, but they have a new head coach and also a new quarterback. So going to be some question marks. So it's really tough to evaluate Bern. Probably bias aside, I would go with Basel just behind the Broncos. If we want to talk power rankings right now, way too early.
Way too early power rankings. Yeah. I believe I actually had that down. I was going to ask you where would you put Bern on that way too early power rankings?
I mean, I think Cologne is the team to beat for good reason, because they proved it for several years. Bern had their shot and took it in 2022, but right behind Cologne, I have it's tough to distinguish between Basel, Bern, and Geneva, in my opinion, right now, because I'm really looking forward to see what Geneva can bring with Clark Evans on the center and as a head coach. I imagine he's going to play. And Bern also with this defensive line, with all these Swiss guys, Ebo at running back, of course, a solid offensive line is going to be better again. And really, I'm excited to see what the new quarterback is going to bring.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one thing I know about Clark from being a former teammate of his to seeing what he's done when he's gone to other organizations. He's gonna somehow make that team compete,
Mhm.
somehow make that team relevant. So the fact that like we're here talking about, obviously you got the Broncos, you got the Gladiators, Burns on the come up, and then there's Geneva out out there that's still trying to come into the mix a little bit. It's Hey, the Swiss League gotta be interesting. I know a lot of
Yeah,
people
for sure.
doubt the Swiss League and maybe don't think it's as great as others, but there's been some talent to come out the Swiss League, and the fact that like there's depth now is gonna be even more exciting. And again, I can't relate this enough. Bern is bringing back their guys. Dominic Leachy played for the Unicorns. He's played in the ELF. Tim Haney's played in the ELF. Like these guys could have went almost anywhere, but they decided to come back to the Swiss League. It's going to be exciting to watch. Again, I had to get my guy Camerlini on from Pro Football Switzerland to chop it up and get his thoughts on it. Obviously, this is still early in the process in the off season. I'm sure there's going to be more to come, but it's definitely a bang to the national Switzerland off season thus far.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm so excited, man. I want the league to start right now, and you have to shout out again my team Basel. I also imagine the current MVP Sky Noble's coming back, and nothing confirmed yet. But I mean, he threw like 36 or like even something like passing touchdowns and two
Yeah.
interceptions in the regular season, and has the most rushing touchdowns. So their offense going to be explosive if they get the guys back, and also with the defense, which is already good. If they have like also some guys that return from the mercenaries or guards, even better. And like we said, Geneva, of course. There are rumors with the Broncos that they have some new players. So I think the Broncos are going to be even stronger, and I really hope the Broncos are going to win the CFL this year, just for
Hey, we
Swiss
were we were
football.
one game away last year. We almost got it, but
Mhm.
I feel like
I
that's
think
always
that
been a theme getting close, even
for
when
sure.
I was there.
I mean, not sure if Max Gray's gonna come back. Their Swiss Army knife,
Yeah,
literally. But that's obviously it is and has to be the goal for the Broncos now that they finished runner up in 2019 and now this year won the Swiss Championship. But also you can't forget like the heavy dose on games the Broncos have
yeah.
playing internationally.
Mhm.
So maybe that's an advantage for the other teams, especially for Bern, which brought depth back. But again, so excited. I think 8 teams is a good number now. Everything less was a bit too small. If you had too many teams, it's the level would be like too big of a gap in between. So I'm really excited, and yeah, we're gonna see
Yeah, it's
who's gonna end up as champions.
it's gonna be exciting. I'm gonna give a shout out to Bern for obviously making the big splashes, but of course, Kalanda Broncos all day, horsepower. Everyone knows how I feel about my squad down in Core, Switzerland. So, hey, brother, I appreciate you coming on, man. I know it's
Thank you
quick,
so
but this
much.
is breaking news, and I feel like this is something that had to be talked about. And again, I'm
Of course.
sure First Down Magazine or Athletes Forum Podcast, we'll get into the effects and how it's going to play out for Helvetic, but it's not about Helvetic today. This is about the Bern Grizzlies and the Swiss League. So appreciate you coming on, brother.
Thank you so much. Thank you. See you soon.
Most definitely.